Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to my channel, Creative Grandma. Have you ever been fascinated with hand-dyed yarn? Have you ever wanted to try your hand and make your own hand-dyed yarn using the colors of your choice, creating beautiful yarn to suit your own needs? So let me tell you about a brand new product from Lion Brand Yarns. They have teamed up with Rit Dye. I think that's how you pronounce it, Rit or Right Dye. Now they have two different kits available, the 24/7 cotton, and they also have the fisherman's wool. Now these kits use two different styles for dyeing the yarn. They come with the yarn, the dye, and the instructions. So let's get started with the first kit, and let me tell you about the 24/7 cotton dyeing kit. I am so excited to try this. I'm going to show you the kits, and then I'm going to go downstairs to my kitchen and I'm going to try this kit, and I'm going to try to dye my own yarn, and you can see firsthand how I'm doing it for the very first time and the results that I get from the kit. So let's go ahead and open the first kit. Again, this is the 24/7 cotton kit. So the first thing you're going to get is a skein of the 24/7 cotton undyed yarn. This is ready to dye. So you get one skein of yarn. So in the box, you're going to get three different dyes. This one is the royal blue, tangerine, and golden yellow. And then you also get the instructions. Now they include the English instructions and they include the Spanish instructions. Now in the instructions, there's a formula for creating other colors with the dye by mixing the dyes together to create other colors. Now the skein of yarn, the 24/7 cotton that comes in your dye kit, is 3.5 ounces, 100 grams, 186 yards, 170 meters. It is a number 4 medium weight yarn. It's 100% cotton, and it's machine wash and dryable. So that is the yarn and the yardage you get with that skein of yarn in the 24/7 cotton. So let me put that back in the box. Now let's take a look at the fisherman wool kit. You get one skein of the fisherman's wool. So let me read the label. It is 100% pure virgin wool. It is hand wash, lay flat to dry. It's 3.5 ounces, 100 grams, 205 yards, 187 meters. It's a number 4 medium weight yarn. So in this kit, I got the purple violet, I got Kelly green, and I got petal pink. So these are the three colors you're getting in the fisherman's wool kit. Now, Lion Brand does have the right dye on their website. It's $4.99 per color. So if you didn't want to get the kit and you wanted to choose your own dye colors, you can also buy the undyed yarn on Lion Brand's website for $6.99 a skein in the 24/7 cotton and the fisherman's wool. So if you already know how to dye yarn, then you can pick up your dye supplies on Lion Brand's website. Now, if it's the first time dyeing your own yarn, then I think the kit is perfect because not only are you getting one skein of yarn, you're getting three different colors, and the most important part is you're getting step-by-step instructions. So I'm in my kitchen. It's a dreary, snowy day outside, so what better time to dye my yarn? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our yarn and we're going to open this up into a circle, and then I'm going to put 4 zip ties to hold the yarn together in a circle. So let me show you what I'm doing. So to begin, we're going to start with the 24/7 cotton, and I'm going to try to dye my first hank of yarn. So what we want to do is we just want to unravel our yarn, and you want to form a circle. So I have it in a circle. Now I do see that it is tied in certain spots, so I'm going to leave those ties right in there, but I'm also going to put my zip ties around the yarn. Now they say to use yarn, but I think zip ties are so much easier. So I'm going to put one on the middle of each side, and then I'm going to put one on each end. So I have my 4 zip ties in place to help hold the yarn together. And now I'm going to pre-soak my yarn in hot water and 2 tablespoons of salt for 30 minutes. So the next step, you're going to pre-soak your yarn in hot water with 2 tablespoons of salt. Now, I have an aluminum pan. I heated the water on the stove. Once it got hot, I turned my stove off. Now I'm going to add my 2 tablespoons of salt. I'm just going to stir that up and help it dissolve. I'm going to go ahead and place my yarn in the hot water, and I'm just going to use my spoon and get it soaking wet, get it right under the water. Just push it down in until that yarn absorbs that water. Once my yarn is completely saturated with water, I just stick a cookie sheet right on top of my pan to help hold that heat in. So I'm going to let this set 30 minutes and then I'll be back and we'll continue dyeing our yarn. Now while my yarn is soaking, I'm going to prepare my dye. Now I'm going to use a speckled technique this time. So I think I'm going to leave the blue out because that's a pretty dominant color. And I'm just going to open my dyes and I'm just going to pour them in a small cup. So I have my 2 colors ready to go. And when my yarn is done soaking, you want to immediately take it out of that hot water, get rid of the excess, and you want to put this powder on and sprinkle it on while that yarn is hot. That's why I'm preparing this in advance. So I'm going to take it over to the stove, and when my yarn is done soaking, I'll be back and show you how fun it is to make speckled yarn. So my cotton yarn has been soaking for 30 minutes. So I'm just going to take it, and you want to wring out the excess. And then I have a cookie sheet with foil on it because I'm going to put this in my oven after I dye the yarn. Now this is a small cookie sheet because I'm using my little confection oven. So I'm just going to lay the yarn out and I'm going to try to spread the yarn so when I sprinkle the dye on, it's going to reach through all those strands. Now you need to sprinkle the dye on while your yarn's still hot. So I'm going to start with my orange dye. Now you don't need a lot of dye. You just want to lightly sprinkle it onto the yarn. And if you want to put it on thicker in some spots than the others, you can do that. Now I'm just going to grab some of my yellow and I'm just going to sprinkle some of the yellow on the yarn and some of those white spots in between the orange. Now it's hard to see the yellow when you're doing this. You have to let it absorb into the yarn. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this onto the other side. And then I'm going to repeat the process. Just try to open that string up. Now it's nice to have some of the white, but you want to try to get the colors uniform throughout. So I'm going to grab my orange and I'm just going to sprinkle the orange through the yarn again. When you see those white spots, just try to get some orange or yellow in those bare spots. And then I'm just going to grab my yellow. And then again, I'm just going to sprinkle that yellow on some of those white spots. So when you see the bare spots, just try to get that yellow in there. Now I think the orange is more predominant. So I think that looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to cover with my foil. And I'm going to put this in a 300-degree oven for 15 minutes. So the yarn has been in the oven for 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the oven. Lift the foil off. So that's what it looks like, almost looks like a pot of spaghetti right there. So I'm gonna let this set completely cool, and then we're going to rinse it and see how those colors turned out after we rinse and wash. So my yarn has been setting for 30 minutes. It's now cold, so we're just going to rinse it in cold water until the water runs clear. So if you look down here in the sink, you're going to see some of that dye, how it's colored, and you just want to keep rinsing it until it runs clear. Now this may take a couple minutes. So once the water runs clear and you're wringing it out, you just want to plug your sink. And because I only have one skein, I'm just going to add 2 drops of liquid detergent, mild detergent. And then you want to just wash your yarn in that soapy water. And you want to make sure you leave your zip ties in just to keep this from tangling up. I'm going to rinse it one last time just to make sure all the soap is out of the yarn. That looks pretty good, so I'm going to turn the water off, and then I'm just going to squeeze the excess water out, and then I'm just going to put this on a rack until it's dry. Once my yarn is dry, I'll be back and show you the finished yarn. So now I'm ready to dye my wool yarn. Now dyeing the wool yarn is just a little bit different. You still want to unwind the hank of yarn into a circle to avoid tangling. I use 4 zip strips, 2 on the ends and 2 on each side. And now we're going to pre-soak our yarn in hot water, but instead of salt, we're going to use vinegar. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of vinegar to our water. Now I do have a pan on my stove. I'm heating my water, and I'm just going to get it hot but not boiling. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of vinegar. And then I'm going to place my yarn. I'm only going to do 1 skein because this is a pretty big skein. And I'm going to put that yarn in the water and let it soak. Let it absorb that water. Push it down with a spoon or spatula or whatever you're using. Now once you get all the yarn saturated with water, you're just going to let that soak for 30 minutes in the hot water. Now just make sure all your yarn is saturated. Now my water is hot, it's not boiling, but it's just to that point where it wants to boil. I'm going to turn it off, and then I'm going to place a cookie sheet over top of the pan to keep that heat in there, keep my yarn nice and hot, and I'm going to let it soak for 30 minutes, and I'll be back, and then I'm going to dye with liquid dye. So my wool yarn has been soaking for 30 minutes, and now I'm going to get my dye bath ready. So this one, I'm going to just use the purple for my first time. So there's 2 tablespoons of dye in the packet, so I dump that all in. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vinegar, and then we're going to add 3 to 4 cups of hot water. And I'm just going to stir this around to get that mixed up. And you want to make sure that all the powder is dissolved in the dye bath. So now, since everything is dissolved, I'm going to grab my yarn. So this is the yarn that I have soaking. So just gently squeeze all that extra water out. So now I'm going to try to create a gradient effect where I'm going to dip half the untwisted yarn hank into the dye bath. And to create a gradient, it's telling me to slowly move the yarn up and down. So I'm just going to move it up and down. And now they're telling me to flip it over. And sorry about my tripod, it's not letting me do what I want today. It's not staying where I want the camera to be. So I'm just going to dip this side in and out of the dye bath. And then I have an area here that's white, so I'm just going to dip that down real quick because I don't want it real dark. So I just dipped it. And then I'm just going to go up and down some more. I'm going to let that bottom in that dye a little bit longer. And I think I'm just going to hold it in the center and let those 2 ends sit in that dye for a little bit longer. Let it absorb the dye. So now I'm just going to wring out the excess dye. So I wrung out the excess yarn, I dyed it, and on the back there's tips where it says heat opens the fibers in the yarn to absorb the dye, ensuring that you get long lasting and vibrant colors. So for the microwave, you want to cover with plastic wrap and heat for 1 to 2 minutes in a microwave safe container. Now, if you want to heat it in the oven, it's telling me to cover with foil. I'm going to cover it with foil, and you want to heat it in the oven at 300 degrees for 15 minutes and then allow it to cool completely before handling. So I placed my yarn in the oven, 300 degrees for 15 minutes. When 15 minutes is up, I'll be back and we'll take it out of the oven. So it's been 15 minutes, so I'm just going to take the yarn out of the oven. And then I'm just going to take the foil off, and I'm going to let this set until it's completely cooled down. So far, I can see the difference in the lavender colors, and I'm very happy with the results so far. So once this cools down, we'll go ahead and rinse it and see if I keep these beautiful colors. So my wool yarn is completely cooled down, and we're going to rinse it under cold water until the water runs clear. So you want to wet the yarn and you just want to keep rinsing it. And I'm going to continue doing this until the water runs clear. Now I think that looks pretty good. It seems to be running clear. So now I'm just going to put some cold water in my sink. I'm going to plug my sink. I'm going to add a little mild detergent, and then you just want to wash your yarn in that mild detergent. Now you want to make sure that you're using cold water when you're rinsing this yarn. So I put just a little too much soap in here, so I'm just trying to get some of that soap out of the yarn. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and wring out the excess and turn the water off. And I'm very happy with the results. I'm definitely seeing different shades, almost like a light lavender, a pinkish color. Can you see the difference in those colors? Very happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead, hang it up and let it dry, and I'll be back when the yarn is dry. So my yarns are dry. You can see the results. This is the wool yarn and this is the 24/7 cotton. This one I tried to do a gradient of the different shades, and this one I did the speckled with just tossing the dry dye onto the yarn. Now don't laugh, I know I have a lot to learn about rehanking the yarn. I had a little bit tough time trying to figure out how to do it. I couldn't figure out how to do it, so this is what my yarn looks like. I had a lot of fun. When you look at this wool yarn, isn't this pretty? You can see the different shades of that lavender. Very pretty. I love the feel and I love the look of the wool. The 24/7 cotton did not have the effect that I wanted, but again, this is a learning experience to teach you how to dye yarn. So if you're interested in trying your hand at hand dyeing yarn, this is a great way to start. Get yourself a kit and just try it. And if you like it, you can order more of the undyed yarn and you can add some extra right dye to your order. They have many colors available and you can just have a fun day trying to learn how to dye yarn. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the new right dye kits that Lion Brand put together. Just a great fun way to try your hand at dyeing yarn. Now you have to remember, this is my first time, so I really enjoyed it. So thank you everybody for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay inspired and happy crocheting.